Okay, air separation plant operator. Not gonna lie, you've piqued my curiosity with this one. You've sent over like a whole stack from RoleCatcher, almost like you're about to make a career jump. So let's unpack this. What's the real deal with this whole air separation thing?
Well, it's funny you should say that. What's fascinating here is how vital this role is. And most people don't even realize it. We're not just talking about industrial gases. We're talking about the stuff that keeps hospitals running, even helps put the fizz in your soda.
Wait, seriously. Okay, now I need details. The RoleCatcher guide kept mentioning optimal operational parameters. Sounds kind of like a make or break situation. What are those exactly?
Imagine this. A heart surgery is underway, and they need a constant, ultra-pure supply of oxygen. That's where these operators come in. They're controlling the entire air separation process, fine-tuning the pressure flow temperature, think of it like a high-stakes balancing act, to get those precise levels of nitrogen and oxygen.
Wow, so not for the easily distracted then. Speaking of high stakes, this isn't some cushy office gig, is it? The guide mentioned noisy, dusty, potentially hazardous materials.
You're picturing it perfectly. This is a hands-on role, often in heavy industrial settings. The guide really hammers home the safety protocols, and for good reason. We're talking about massive equipment, sometimes extreme temperatures, and the tiniest mistake in handling those materials could be disastrous.
Okay, so maybe not for the faint of heart, but for someone who thrives on that kind of pressure, it sounds like there's a lot of responsibility, which usually means room to grow, right?
You're reading between the lines, which is exactly what a good operator needs to do. This isn't a dead-end job. The guide lays out a clear path from entry level all the way to supervisor, even mentioning that experience in this field is like gold because the technology is always advancing.
Music to my ears. So not stuck in a rut constantly learning new things, but what about the job market itself? Is this a field with a future, or am I going to be fighting for scraps?
You're in luck. This field is booming due to a few key things the guide highlights. The rise of green hydrogen production, which relies heavily on air separation, new advancements in things like carbon capture technology, and even the growing medical field, which is always going to need those pure gases.
Okay, so there's a clear need, which often translates to decent earning potential. The guide did mention competitive salaries give us the juicy details.
We're not just talking competitive, we're talking a field where experience is highly valued, meaning you can climb the ladder pretty quickly. RoleCatcher actually breaks down average salaries in their insights tool, and it's not unusual to see six-figure salaries for experienced operators, especially those with specialized certifications.
Okay, now we're talking. But let's be real, getting your foot in the door is half the battle. The guide also touched on RoleCatcher's interview prep tools, which seem like a game changer.
Imagine this. You walk into an interview and you've already practiced answering thousands of potential questions specific to this role using their AI to get feedback on your delivery and even your body language on video. That's RoleCatcher's secret sauce.
Hold on, AI analyzing my every twitch and stammer. That's both amazing and slightly terrifying, but seriously, that level of prep would be invaluable.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. They also have this CV building tool that's like having a professional resume writer on speed dial, making sure your application doesn't get lost in the black hole of automated systems.
Okay, sign me up. But before we hand over our credit card info, let's dig into the nitty-gritty of what an air separation plant operator actually does all day.
Let's break it down. Imagine a typical day. You're walking into a large industrial facility, the air buzzing with the hum of machinery. Your first task, checking those crucial gauges, monitoring the pressure flow and temperature at various stages of the process, because even a tiny fluctuation can impact the purity of the final product.
It's always on high alert, making sure those numbers stay in the green. Sounds intense.
You've got it. You're responsible for the purity of the gases being used in hospitals. That's a huge responsibility.
No pressure or anything. Get it. But seriously, are you constantly just staring at gauges, or are there other things going on?
You'll definitely be putting your problem-solving skills to the test. Air separation plants are complex beasts, and equipment malfunctions can happen. You'll need to troubleshoot, think on your feet, and maybe even get your hands dirty with some minor repairs. It's a dynamic environment.
So, not a job for those who prefer to just clock in and clock out. And speaking of that, what's the schedule like? The guide mentioned something about shift work.
You're right. This isn't your typical 9 to 5 air separation plants run around the clock, so be prepared for evening, night, maybe even weekend shifts. But on the flip side, that often means more autonomy and less micromanagement. You know, it's funny how we think of essential workers as mostly frontline jobs. But this is a whole other level of essential. We're talking about the infrastructure that makes modern life possible.
It's like you said before, most people don't even realize this whole industry exists. So for someone hearing this who's now thinking, wait, maybe this is my jam, where do they even begin?
RoleCatcher's Career Compass tool is a great place to start. It helps map out a path, not just for this specific role, but for your overall career goals. It's easy to get tunnel vision, but this tool encourages you to think bigger picture.
Okay, I'm all about thinking bigger picture. How does this career compass thing actually work?
It starts by getting up close and personal with your own strengths and weaknesses. Are you a tech whiz who loves tinkering, or more of a meticulous rule follower? The tool helps you identify those key traits and then matches them with potential career paths. You might be surprised at what pops up.
Love that, because who hasn't secretly wondered if they're in the wrong line of work? But back to air separation, you mentioned certifications being valuable. What kind are we talking about here?
There are a few different routes, and RoleCatcher does a nice job breaking them down by experience level. For someone just starting out, an associate's degree in process technology or a related field is a great foundation.
Okay, so a solid educational base, but then what about those specialized certs you mentioned?
As you gain experience, you can level up with certifications specific to industrial gas operations. Things like Certified Industrial Gas Operator, CIGO, or even Certified Cryogenic Operator, CCO. That one's for those who really like things cold.
Okay, so definitely not afraid of a little or a lot of cold. But all those certs must translate to some serious earning power, right?
You're catching on. Like we mentioned earlier, experience is king in this field. An entry-level operator might start around $50,000, but with the right certs and experience, you can easily climb into the six figures, especially if you're willing to relocate to areas with high demand, like Texas or Louisiana, where a lot of these plants are located.
So not just what you know, but where you know it. Speaking of location, what's the work environment actually like? I'm picturing a lot of steel, maybe some flickering fluorescent lights.
You're not far off. These plants can be massive with towering structures and a network of pipes and equipment. It's not for the claustrophobic, that's for sure.
Definitely sounds like you'd get your steps in. But seriously, what's the vibe like? Is it high stress all the time?
It can be demanding, but there's also a camaraderie that comes from working in a high-stakes environment where everyone relies on each other. Plus, many operators say there's a certain satisfaction that comes from knowing you're part of something essential.
I can see that, like a quiet sense of pride. But what about the potential downsides? The guide must have mentioned a few.
Of course. We've touched on the shift work, which isn't for everyone. It can disrupt your sleep schedule and make it tricky to maintain a work-life balance, especially if you have a family.
Right, those late night calls when a gauge goes haywire probably don't make you too popular at home. What else?
The work itself can be physically demanding. You're on your feet a lot, sometimes lifting heavy equipment, working at heights. Safety is paramount, but accidents can happen, so you need to be constantly aware of your surroundings.
So not a job for someone who's afraid of a little hard work, but honestly, those challenges almost make it sound more appealing, like you've really earned that sense of accomplishment.
That's the spirit. And you know, another thing the guide emphasized was the importance of continuous learning in this field. It's not enough to just learn the ropes. You've got to stay ahead of the curve.
Because the last thing you want is for the technology to outpace your skills, right?
Exactly. Think about it this way. These plants are like giant puzzles, and the technology is always evolving. To be the best, you've got to enjoy putting those puzzle pieces together.
That's a great analogy. So how does someone actually go about this continuous learning thing?
RoleCatcher highlights several ways. First, industry publications are key. Staying updated on the latest advancements like new cryogenic techniques or advancements in pressure swing absorption can give you a leg up.
So no resting on your laurels, always reading, researching, staying in the know.
Precisely. And conferences and workshops are another goldmine. Imagine rubbing shoulders with leading engineers and researchers in the field. You might learn about groundbreaking new technologies or even land a job offer.
Networking the role catcher way. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, the good, the challenging, and the downright essential. But I have a feeling some listeners are now wondering, okay, so how do I actually land one of these jobs?
That's where RoleCatcher really shines. And not just with their amazing tools. They've also got this incredible database of company profiles, over 9 million in fact. It's like having a crystal ball that lets you peek inside a company before you even apply.
Okay, spill the tea. What kind of intel are we talking about?
Everything from company culture and values to salary ranges and even employee reviews. You can see if they're actively involved in sustainability initiatives or investing in cutting-edge technologies.
So I can not only find a job, but a company that aligns with what I'm looking for? That's incredible.
Exactly. You're not just another resume in a pile. You're making informed decisions about your career. And speaking of resumes, let's not forget RoleCatcher's secret weapon, that CV and resume builder we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah, the one that's like having your own personal resume guru.
It's not just about making your resume look pretty. It's about optimizing it for those pesky applicant tracking systems. You know, those things that can feel like digital gatekeepers.
Don't remind me. I swear, sometimes I think I'd have better luck hand-delivering my resume on horseback.
I hear you. But with RoleCatcher, you can be confident that your resume is formatted correctly, highlights the right keywords, and actually makes it to the hiring manager's desk.
Music to my ears. Okay, so my resume is in tip-top shape. But what about that other necessary evil, the dreaded cover letter? Any tips on making mine stand out from the crowd?
They've got you covered. RoleCatcher's cover letter tool is like having a personal wordsmith on call. It helps you craft a compelling narrative, highlighting your unique skills and experiences in a way that resonates with hiring managers.
So it's not just a generic template. I can actually inject some personality into it.
Absolutely. The tool prompts you to answer thought-provoking questions, helping you tell your career story in a way that's both authentic and engaging.
That's great because I think sometimes people forget that behind every application, there's a real person with their own unique experiences and aspirations.
Exactly. And that's what makes a good cover letter stand out. It's not just about listing your accomplishments, it's about connecting with the reader on a human level.
You know, it's one thing to talk about gauges and certifications, but I'm picturing someone who's drawn to this field being wired a certain way. Like, they wouldn't be happy in just any job, right?
You're absolutely right. It takes a special kind of person to thrive in this environment. I'd say first and foremost, someone who finds a sense of purpose in the details.
Okay. I like that purpose in the detail. So not just someone who's good at following procedures, but who understands why those procedures are so crucial.
Exactly. Remember, we're talking about the purity of medical-grade oxygen, the stability of industrial gases used in manufacturing.
Yeah.
The smallest oversight could have ripple effects.
So a healthy dose of conscientiousness is key. What else? What are some other traits that scream air separation superstar?
You've got to be a problem solver at heart. These plants are like finely tuned machines, and things can and do go wrong. Think on your feet, troubleshoot under pressure. Those aren't just skills, they're personality traits in this line of work.
So a bit of a pressure cooker, but also knowing when to sound the alarm if things are truly off. There's that responsibility factor again.
100%. And you can't be afraid to get your hands dirty literally. This isn't a desk job. You're on your feet working with your hands sometimes in challenging conditions.
Okay, so we've got the meticulousness, the problem-solving, the grit. What about the people skills? Is this a solo mission, or are you collaborating with others?
Communication is key. You're part of a team working closely with other operators, engineers, supervisors. Being able to clearly explain technical details, log information accurately, those are essential for smooth operation and safety.
So it's not enough to be a lone wolf genius. You've got to be a team player. What a great reminder that technical skills are only part of the equation.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And, you know, as we wrap up this deep dive, I think that's a perfect note to end on. Yes, we've explored the ins and outs of becoming an air separation plant operator, but the underlying theme is clear.
Lay it on us.
It's about finding your place in a system larger than yourself. This role, often unseen, touches so many aspects of our world. If that resonates with you, if the idea of mastering complex processes and ensuring the quality of something so vital is exciting, then this might be the career path you've been searching for.
And if there's one thing we've learned from our deep dive into RoleCatcher, it's that you don't have to navigate this journey alone. With their tools and insights, you can approach this career or any career with confidence and a plan.
Couldn't agree more.
This has been an eye-opener. Thanks for guiding us through this deep dive.
My pleasure. Always happy to shed light on a fascinating and often overlooked career path.